Yeah, we welcome you back. Always great to catch up with our friend Phillip Stutts, who has done a lot of things in his life, from political consulting to media consulting to social media expertise, and he's also become our expert on the name, image, and likeness conundrum. We are in a new year, in case you missed New Year's Day, and Phillip rejoins the program. Phillip, thank you very much for the time. And with Congress back in Washington, things a little bit different than the last time we talked to you. Give us the latest on where NIL is.
So we are in unprecedented times and division of partisanship, but only one entity could bring Democrats and Republicans together in this moment, and that's the NCAA. And so their choice to punt last week at their national meeting on name, image, and likeness has really brought both sides of the NIL argument on the Republican and Democratic side together. The question is, what are the next steps? How will the new administration and the new Congress look at this? And I'm happy to kind of unravel all that for you as well.
Yeah, and I would imagine not many people have missed the fact that Congress, the Senate is deadlocked 50-50, which tilts toward the Democrats with the new administration coming in tomorrow. Congress, the House is slightly in favor of the Democrats. Does any of that matter?
Well, it does, because previously the NCAA was looking at working with more of a Republican-minded Congress, whether that be in the Senate or the House. Now that there's a 50-50 tie, and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris is going to be the decision maker if it's a tie, and she has sort of backed the Democrats' bill. This is Cory Booker and Richard Blumenthal, the U.S. senators, have a bill that's much more expansive than the NCAA ever wanted to have out there. And now with this new leadership in place, that looks like there's going to be some compromise between the Republican bill that only sticks to allowing athletes to make their money on name, image, and likeness alone, and the Democratic bill, which allows sort of a collective of making money, let's say, on budget revenue profits, long-term health care plans for athletes, some of these big, expansive, sort of bigger government programs. And ultimately what's going to happen is, I believe, everybody's going to come together and figure out some kind of compromise. They have to do this by July 1, because Florida has already enacted a NIL bill for their own state. So they're going to have a massive recruiting advantage, any college in the state of Florida, if there is not a one standard national bill passed that the NCAA backs.
So, Phillip, what else is out there other than Congress in terms of state houses?
Well, there's been lots of bills passed, but most of them have 3-year windows on them. So they wouldn't go into effect until about 2023. Florida is the key, because Florida's bill that passed, the law that passed, said July 1, 2021. So this is sort of a deadline that nobody can get around. And, you know, ultimately, I keep coming back to this, Paul. Congress is going to come together. The Biden administration will probably back what the Democrats and the Republicans are putting forward. I know Kamala Harris has, like I said earlier, backed the Democratic bill. And so there will be some kind of coming together between Congress on this. Is weird, because Congress wanted the NCAA to lead, and they did not. So now they're coming in and saying, all right, well, we're going to do it, and you're going to live with what we come up with. And so ultimately, that's where we get. But for me, Paul, it almost feels like that's the checker play. And the chess play is, if everything passes, if an NIL bill gets passed, it's something that everybody agrees on in Congress, what does that mean for college football, SEC football, come next fall and beyond? And I think this is where it gets super interesting. These are what I'd call second and third order consequences. And for instance, if an NIL bill passes, and now all the colleges have to, enact this within their institutions, think about the advantage that national college football brands have over a state football brand. For example, an Ohio State, an Alabama, an Oklahoma, even a USC in the Pac-12. They would have massive advantages in recruiting five-star athletes to their universities, because they can say, we have a national brand. You're not gonna just send an autograph deal with a local car company. So universities like Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Wichita State, like these smaller schools, are going to have an inherent disadvantage with whatever passes Congress and is ratified by the NCAA. And you could even look at like a Tennessee right now. When you've got universities like Alabama and Clemson who have spent over 2 years preparing for NIL to come into place and have the resources to recruit athletes and say, you're going to be part of a national brand. And then you look at Tennessee, which is going through NCAA troubles, coaching troubles, all of these deficiencies for them. What athlete is going to say, well, it's best for me to go to Tennessee because, you know, I'm going to make more money there than I would at Alabama or Clemson. That's just not going to happen. And so the brands, the national football brands that are powerful right now are going to get even more powerful as I see it going forward.
Yeah, and Philip, I mean, we're a week away from Alabama winning the national title, where everyone, you know, is suggesting break up the Yankees, so to speak. And the more you're in the playoffs, the better it is in recruiting. And you're clearly stating that the rich are only going to get richer. What is the little guy supposed to do?
Well, you know, the short-term play, what you see on Twitter right now, is expand the playoffs. But if you only have 10 big-time national brand football teams under the NIL agreement that'll eventually pass, then an 18 playoff means really only 10, maybe 12 teams will be really in play for that because they are able to recruit the better players better than anybody else. And so, you know, we've seen this with COVID, especially on the economy, where you see the Amazons, the Apples, the Facebooks, the Googles have exploded. They're almost oligarch companies now. And in a way, you could see that absolutely happening with college football going forward under the new NIL agreement that'll eventually get passed in whatever form it looks like.
And let me go back to that, away from NIL for a second, because we had you on quite a few times during the early days of the pandemic, and you know you had some fascinating things to say to people. We're not out of it yet, although sometimes we act like we are. But I think we at least see the end in sight. How will things be different as we move from the winter to spring and ultimately summer, and hopefully have a normal fall?
So we've looked at this. We've looked at the American consumer and our database. We have 200 million plus American consumers. We're monitoring 550 million connected devices, 10 billion online purchasing decisions every day, and 1 trillion searches. And everything in our data tells us that the American people right now are convinced that by June of 2021, the vaccine will have been distributed to enough people and we can begin going back to normal with our lives. That includes attending sporting events and having a more normal economy. And that, while that's a very hopeful outlook, and I think most of the consumers looking at this right now are just praying that that's what it is, we have yet to see. There are certain factors that we know would impede that. If the new Biden administration has a harder time rolling out the vaccine, that's going to slow down that we're going to get back to normal process, right? There's more civil unrest or a massive collapse in the stock market. These are all things that could impede sort of that June 2021 outlook that so many consumers are hoping for and really pinning all of their hopes on that really being the kickoff to us starting to get back to normal again.
Phillip Stutts, the latest on NIL and a look ahead to where we are as a society, and of course tomorrow the inauguration day. By the way, we haven't talked since a former SEC head coach is now sitting in the halls of Congress. Can we expect major change in relation to sports from Senator Tuberville?
Well, TBD. As long as he does not throw out the thumb, I think we'll be okay.
Phillip, who spent a lot of his early days not only working in the White House, but consulting political candidates. So we always try to get a sports tie-in, and he is our only connection right now to the United States Senate. Thank you for the time, as always, Phillip. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
You got it. Great stuff from Phillip Stutts. We will take a break. And more of your phone calls at 855-242-7.